welcome to episode 3 of the Booze Cruise. What up, friend? It's your boy Anzo, the betting bartender, the booze of the operation here, and we got Brandon Cruz coming in, buddy. Brandon, what's going on, my man? How you doing today?
Nothing much, doing well. Watch some preseason football right now, just having a good time.
Heck yeah, it's finally back. I'm not going to touch preseason football. I know that's one of the things you do on your channel, but we will have stuff coming for regular season. But as always on the Booze Cruise, we're talking about NASCAR this week. Just remember, folks, this is Brandon and I's takes prior to any practice or qualifying times. So this is happening on a Thursday night with no track information on it for this race. So a quick look. We'll have updates as the week moves on. Be sure to check those videos out. It is the Consumers Energy 400 at Mission International Speedway. Wasn't too long ago that we saw this track, about 2 months ago for the Firekeepers 400. 200 laps, 2 mile. I mean, do you want to call it a D oval?
Yeah, we'll just call it a D oval. It's close enough like that. Not a true oval, but a D oval.
So at the track, obviously, 400 total miles, and we're looking at the same race exactly as the Firekeepers. It's a breakup of 60 laps for the first 2 stages each, so 60 and 60, and then 80 laps for the third stage for people that are concerned with stage points and those final playoff points that can get, which leaves us with 150 points for Dominator points, which is not a ton. I mean, I know the last couple of weeks we've been much lower than that, but we're still not up to that like 175, 200 level. So how much are you going to be putting into like Dominator points here, especially if one of these drivers can kind of like take care of business?
I'm going to put a little bit more weight into it than the previous weeks, even though you did say it's not as much as the 300 lap races that we see sometimes. But it is more important mainly because there usually is 1 to 2 actual dominators in this race, unlike some of the road courses and things of that nature where they switch back and forth past a little bit here and there. This is one where I actually do want to focus on getting who I think is going to lead at least the first stage, the second stage, and then try and find the guy who would take over after that.
Heck yeah, and we're going to jump into the names right now. And, last week my gut pick on our show was actually Chase Elliott, which actually ended up winning, and he dominated last week's race. Obviously totally different than this, but when we look at dominators over the last 10 races, it looks like Logano, dating back to 2014, has dominated or led at least 86 laps in 3 of those races. Kevin Harvick led 108 laps in 2018 here, and Keselowski back in 2017 was 105 laps, and Kyle Larson 96 laps in 2017. Now Logano just at the Firekeepers led 163 laps, and you obviously need him to be in those winning teams. Is Logano someone that you're going to be looking at right now, running hot and seems to do well at this track, or Chase Elliott does well here also? So who would you think is going to be like some dominators you could look at? And of course, we always got to say maybe Kyle Busch as well.
Well, definitely anybody from Penske and a Ford right now specifically. Looking at the last 10 races, I know that's a bit far out, last 5 years. Maybe you might want to look at last 3 years. But with out of the last 10 races, the guys who stand out to me, going back to Logano has led 419 laps in the last 10 races. Harvick has led 283 from the last 10 races. Hamlin 148, Keselowski 145, and Truex at 161. I mean, those guys basically right there from the last 10 races have basically led a little over like an actual race here. So those guys are the ones that I would look at right now to continue that type of stuff. Actual dominators based on probably this year, the last race we saw earlier in June, I'd probably go ahead and focus on Logano, probably Truex and Larson and Elliott as well, just because those guys have been up there recently on these types of big 2 mile tracks.
Yes, and another thing we got to look at as well is looking at where these drivers are starting from. So last week we said, you got to pick one of the leaders, pole position or very close to that, because there wasn't going to be much passing. If we look at here, over 100 races at Michigan, 59 wins have come from the first 5 spots. Is that like a little out of the ordinary, especially for a D-oval type track?
But before we brought this package in, I would say no. Just because this package is more built to single file things of that nature. Michigan has always been one of those tracks to where you might see, you'll see pack racing, for like eighth on back or whatnot. But usually whoever was fast here was fast, whether it was, Dale Jarrett in his 88 car, Earnhardt Jr. in the 2000s when he was winning here. Just different guys. Whoever's the fastest guy on the weekend typically just dominates it, and usually they're going to qualify up in front.
Right, yeah, and as long as they don't do anything crazy in their practice, like, I don't know, run qual trim in one of the practice or something crazy like that, and that's their time, and then they stay with it, blah, blah, blah. It is something you have to look at, just fast cars. Whoever's fastest and the best equipment will probably do best here, because there are, winners come from almost every single spot. They're just scattered out, but it was just amazing looking at those front five and be like, wow, that's, almost 60% of the wins have come from the first 5 spots, which is just seemed a little odd to me. And it's good that you mentioned with the package and everything too. Now, back in June, it was Logano first to first and got 90.25 points. And the next best was Martin Truex with 59 points. So it makes a big difference if someone comes out here and just leads a ton of laps like Logano did. If it's more spread out, and we had one of those years prior, it looked like it was like 2016 and 2015 where it was a little bit more spread out. That's going to change up the scoring quite a bit, obviously. So I guess that leads us into diving into the field and going into like how we think this race is going to pan out here. And obviously, it's Kyle Busch coming out at 12.4, Harvick at 11.8, Truex at 11.3, and Keselowski 10.7, and Logano 10.2. Out of those like front 5 or most 5 expensive drivers, who kind of fits the bill at Michigan?
I'm going to go back to the blue oval answer here, just because the Ford cars, whether it be the Mustang or the Fusion, they were designed for aerodynamic capabilities. They were designed around that type of stuff. That's why even with the old Ford Fusion, they would dominate on Talladega. They would dominate on these types of tracks just because those cars were designed with these types of tracks in mind. So Harvick, Keselowski, and Logano are certainly shooting out to me right now. I'd say Truex, but with him being the only Toyota there, surrounded by 3 other Fords that I just like, I have to lean with the Fords this time around. And I want to just loop to this right fast to support how these guys have been dominating. When Logano won last year, it was on a green-white checkered finish, and he had a 0.47 second lead there at the end. I believe when Harvick won last year, this race in 2018, he had 3.2 seconds, a margin of victory between second place. So that just shows how much faster these guys are, whether it be a long run or a short 3-lap shootout. I mean, if you got the faster car and you're out there, you're just going to pull away from the field.
So it could be one of those things like if they're laying down the PJ1 or whatever, could that make a difference maybe?
Yes, and actually, speaking of that, they put it on the very top of the track this time around. I believe they put that and the tire dragon on here, but there's just a huge, it looks like Flex Seal or something on the top side of the racetrack this weekend.
Okay, so that should make things a little bit interesting as well, I guess. Jumping down below 10 grand, it starts with Denny Hamlin at 9.9, and then let's go all the way down to Alex Bowman at 9.1. Is anybody from that area kind of something that you're looking at keying in on? It looks like, obviously Denny Hamlin's coming in with the greatest form out of all these drivers, but maybe Kurt Busch is a little bit better at this type of track. Either those guys or someone else kind of pique your interest, kind of like we'll call it like the top middle tier.
Yeah, those guys certainly piqued my interest. Chase Elliott really stands out to me. In his 7 races here, he has 3 top 5s and 6 top 10s here. I mean, he's been stupid consistent here with an average finish of 7.4. I believe he finished 2nd and 3rd 4 races in a row or something. It was like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th or something, like just consecutively right when he entered the top series here. So Chase Elliott, obviously based on how he finishes here, and he normally starts around 12th, 11th, somewhere around there. So if he can get me, a top 6, a top 5, that's what I'm looking for out of him.
Yeah, right when he entered, he started off with actually 3 second-place finishes, both in 2016 and 2017. And the last race here, he was 20th. So you can kind of like put that as the outlier. Everything else has been top 10. So he basically has 6 top 10s and a 20th. So he's definitely someone's going to have, and he comes at that 94-100 range. So you can pretty much put him and then 2 guys above him in the same team and same lineup, and then start your builds there, I think, no matter, barring where it happens to people and where they're starting from. But still, if you're going to have 2 studs and then Chase, then you can kind of go pretty much everywhere. Obviously you're going to have to dive down to someone that could do a bit differential for you, but it's probably going to be popular builds. You're right. So Chase Elliott's probably going to be somewhere that's owned quite a bit this week, especially coming off the win, and people don't really care what type of track that was. Then down below, we have Clint Boyer at 8,700 down to Almirola at 8,100. I mean, Kyle Larson's the one that sticks out, but he's been having like a kind of up and down year for his standards, I would say, because he's a good driver. But at 8,300, that almost seems like a must play, maybe.
I was about to say Larson is far too low based on pure history right here. At 8, well, even in general, him at 8,300 is a steal at a track that he's been good at. And Larson hasn't been as dominant as Elliott here, but Larson did get his first win here. He's shown consistency here. He's just had a bit of a rough patch this year, as we've said in previous episodes. But Larson is certainly a guy that I look at. Same with Clint Boyer again, just a guy who seems to, just perform better at this track for whatever reason, that it just suits him way more than other tracks.
Yup, and then he actually did the trifecta, 3 wins in a row, so the three-peat, whatever you want to call it, back in 2016 and 2017. So he's going to be someone that people are going to look at for definitely. And then we dive down in like 7,000 range, and it really looks like, look who we have here again. Once again, William Byron, 7,700. People are going to probably want to look at him just for what he's doing this season. I think it's going to come down to this scenario, as you said last week. Is he going to screw us with starting like second or third and not being able to hold it, what he seems to do every week? Anybody from that range, though, kind of someone you want to play? Maybe Jimmy. Is it Jimmy Johnson week once again?
Oh man, Jimmy Johnson. I hope so. If he can show some speed. Suarez, I don't really trust. Chris Buescher, we kind of know where he stands. The 3 will probably overqualify. I like Menard. I don't have his history up with me. Menard, last 10 races, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, which is better than most tracks. Average finished at 15th. Average started 19th. So he is better here than in general. And he's finished on the lead lap 9 races out of the last 10. So Menard, based on that, would probably be there. I'd hope that he would qualify somewhere between 23rd and 20th for me to really use him. Anything a little bit higher I might not really be fond of. But Menard there. Stenhouse, I don't know, man. Stenhouse would either finish well here or wreck some other people. It fits a lot with his driving style, kind of like pack racing, wide track to make moves on, different lanes. That fits more of what Stenhouse is better at than like a cookie cutter 1.5 mile or things of that nature. So probably Menard and Stenhouse would be 2 that I would look at.
Well, then we dive down even lower, right? And you have Di Benedetto, who's kind of having, like, as far as DraftKings or fantasy wise, he's doing all right. Daniel Hemrick, who seems to not actually mind this type of track and just hit or miss completely. Ty Dillon, who's having, for his standards, a pretty good year. Corey LaJoie, he's just been like the surprise of the year at 5,500. Might garner quite a bit of ownership. And then you have, Tift, Reagan, Castle. I skipped right over Wallace for a reason. Anybody down there like really dirt cheap or lower that you can kind of look at now and make a decision? Or is that basically going to be like, all right, who's starting, in 37th, 36th, 38th and can kind of squeak through?
Now, this is one of those races where I'm just disgusted by anyone under $5,500 because on these types of tracks, especially with the packages they're running now, these guys are going to be full throttle, redlining. No, we're not redlining, but they're going to have high RPMs the entire way around the track. They're not going to be on and off like most places. Typically, underfunded teams tend to struggle more on these types of tracks just because it puts more wear and tear on their motors. The field gets spread out more, so these guys are more likely to be lapped or, not. People don't really start and park in this Cup Series as much as they used to anymore, but this is one of those where the lack of funding is really going to show up compared to, smaller tracks.
That totally makes sense. I hope that doesn't happen, but you're right. At like this point in the season, I guess it's about time, right? Any other news that you have or any other takes on the race and the drivers here?
Probably Stenhouse is my biggest take there. I like Stenhouse. I'm going to play Hemrick again in some lineup just to see what happens with Hemrick. It will be interesting to see if Fords dominate again, because what's happened at this track is it keeps switching between Ford wins 3 races, Chevy wins 3 races, Ford wins 3 races. And right now, Ford has won 3 races, so we'll have to see if that continues in that pattern. I normally don't focus too much on those stats, but I just found that interesting looking at the history of these races.
That's actually a very good point, to know what car makes actually do well at these tracks. So if that helps anybody out, definitely give a shout. What are your takes? What do you think is a car make that could win? And are you going to be looking at that as someone to build your teams? Now, Brennan, always good having this show together. Let everybody know on my channel where your stuff is at.
My channel, Brandon Cruz, DFS. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to me on YouTube. I got a lot of preseason stuff coming on. I'm putting a lot of things out there. I absolutely love preseason. But guys, I got a lot of preseason stuff coming out. Got a lot of regular season stuff coming out. NASCAR videos focusing on Xfinity, Truck, and Cup Series coming out every week that they end up racing. So guys, just check me out. Ask me anything you want on Twitter or on my Facebook and all that stuff. Enzo, thanks for letting me join you again. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, man, as always, our show is, again, for people that didn't hear it in the beginning, this is a show that comes out prior to any on-track running. So no practices right now, no quals right now. So if you're watching this or listening to this after Thursday night, just know that we have other videos coming out and other information coming out to you to talk about NASCAR, to update all the information. This is just like a quick take on where to kind of start building your teams. You can find my stuff at DFS Tavern across like the social media universe. And as always, we have different videos that can come out. You can check out right over here and over here. Best of luck to you this weekend, not only with your DFS, but everything else in life. Keep dancing to the music. Cheers.